Welcome. It is Verdict with Ted Cruz Weekend Review. Ben Ferguson with you. And here's some big stories that you may have missed that we talked about this week. First up, the polling numbers are out, and we now know a lot more about who voted for communism in New York City. What does it mean for the rest of the country? We'll break it down for you. Also, Senator Kennedy joined us to talk about his new book. Who did he write it for, and what was the goal? And finally, I just got back from Israel with an incredible trip, and we'll give you those highlights. It's the Weekend Review, and it starts right now. All right, so let's break down the election. It was a, quote, disaster. The media was just thrilled of what happened on election night. Mandani is the one, though, that I want to really focus on for a second. He is a communist. He's a proud communist. He went back to his core beliefs in his victory speech, basically yelling at Donald Trump and saying, we are a communist city. The red apple literally now is red apple of communism. Breaking this down, this seems to be a point where Democrats are actually almost doubling down on this type of extremism in their party. I think this is actually going to grow between now and the midterms, and I want your reaction to what we learned.
Well, Comrade Mandani is the face of the Democrat Party now, and I got to say the election results this week, they were a disaster. They were an absolute blowout. What is striking is several things. Number one, turnout was exceptionally high among the left-wing base, and that's a real warning sign for next year, for the midterms. The left showed up in massive numbers. They're pissed. They hate Donald Trump, and that anger is dangerous. That anger is motivating. And too many folks on the right, too many kind of in the common sense middle, stayed home. And I will tell you, if you look historically, all right, let's go back to 2008. 2008, Barack Obama's elected. As a result, a lot of folks on the right, you and me included, were really unhappy. We didn't like Barack Obama's policies. We were pissed off. 2010 was a massive tidal wave year. It was the Tea Party wave, and it was in large part because those on the right were particularly energized and angry. Fast forward to 2012. 2012, Barack Obama is reelected president. And the reaction again, 2014 was another wave election, a huge election. We won 9 Senate seats. We retired Harry Reid as majority leader. We won the biggest majority in the House since 1928. And it was because, again, those on the right were angry, they were energized, they were contributing money, they volunteered, and those on the left were complacent. By the way, fast forward to 2018. Donald Trump had just been elected in 2016. 2018 was a very good Democrat year. We lost a bunch of seats. Why? Because the left was really energized, and folks on the right were a little bit complacent. This week's election day suggests that we're in real danger of that happening again in 2026, that the left, I'll tell you on fundraising, the left is outraising the right anywhere between 3-1 and 4-1. That is really, really dangerous. Yeah. And the turnout in Virginia, the left showed up in much bigger numbers. The turnout in New Jersey, the left showed up in much bigger numbers. The turnout in New York City, the left turned out in much bigger numbers. Now, Ben, I'll tell you one of the most interesting, do you know what demographic was dominated by the radical left wing on Election Day?
This is shocking because you and I, we geek out on the political stuff and data after elections. Young people in the Democratic Party were really ready to go vote.
Yeah, but let me be more precise. Young women. And let me give you some stats. In New York City, among young women 18 to 29, 81% voted for Comrade Mandani. In New Jersey,
18 to 29. Wow.
In New Jersey, among young women, 80% voted for Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, in New Jersey, of young women. In Virginia, 78% of young women voted for Abigail Spanberger. It was dominant. And by the way, to give you a comparison, because yes, young people went left, but there was a big gender gap. So, young women in New York, 81% for Mandani. Young men, 64% for Mandani. So almost a 20-point gender gap. How about New Jersey? Young women, 80% for Mikey Sherrill. 54% of young men. So a 26% gender gap in New Jersey. How about Virginia? 78% for Spanberger of young women. just 56% of young men in Virginia. So we saw that this was a race where the single most overwhelming demographic was young women, which was so overwhelmingly lopsided that it helped drive the results on Election Day.
You know, when you think about this, and then it goes back to, okay, what was the messaging that was connecting with young women to have them come out in these numbers? Or was it not so much of a message? And this is part of the breakdown of trying to figure out what you learned from an election to make sure before the midterms we can course correct it. Or was it just that the left and women in the Democratic Party were so motivated compared to conservative women? I call it the Trump slump. You feel like your party's in power. You feel like they're doing the things that you asked them to do.
Complacency.
Donald Trump is putting in complacency, but you feel comfortable because you're like, we just won an election. Yeah, things are great. Donald Trump's doing what he said he was going to do. So when you look at it, was it issue-based based on data that we've seen, or was it more just the other side was so angry that Donald Trump won and they wanted to win so badly to send a middle finger to the president that they showed up in these record numbers and they voted for their candidate?
Yeah, we don't have that data yet. There will be time to break that out, but we don't have it right now. But I'll give you another aspect in New York City. So there was a massive difference based on whether you were a longtime New Yorker or you were new to the city. So if you're a New York voter and you had been in New York City, you'd lived in New York City less than 5 years, what percent of the people who lived in New York City less than five years do you think voted for Comrade Mandani?
Got to be overwhelmingly high.
83%. All right. How about 5 to 10 years? What do you think 5 to 10 years?
I would say it's probably still fairly high, but not as high as that first group.
76%. Okay,
wow.
Let's go 10 years or more, but not born in New York City. What do you think the percentage is?
About 50%?
54. So it drops from 76, 5 to 10 years, to 54. How about I was born in New York City, which, by the way, is 47% of the voters were born in New York City. What do you think? What percent of the vote do you think Mandani got of people born in New York City?
I'm going to guess below 50%.
34%. Cuomo got 45%. So Cuomo beat Mandani by 11 points among people born in New York. But among people who lived in New York less than 5 years, Mandani beat him 83% to 15%. So it is overwhelmingly
There was a clear rallying cry from Mandani, and he did this in his campaigning. He did it, by the way, in his victory speech. He said that New York City is a city of immigrants. In other words, if you came here recently, I'm your guy. The establishment, the old school, the American citizen, you're not a priority in New York City anymore. This reminds me an awful lot of what we were talking about 10 years ago in major cities in the UK. We are seeing a lot of those same type of results now in New York City.
Yeah, and by the way, there's also a significant educational differential. All right, so if you're in New York and you had an advanced degree, what percent of the vote do you think Mandani got?
Advanced degree, I would say maybe around 50% or below.
57%. Advanced degree, 57%. How about bachelor's degree?
Oh, gosh, I'm going to go maybe even lower.
57%. So advanced and bachelor's both tied at 57. How about associate's degree?
I would say higher.
45%. By the way, Cuomo got 48. So if you had an associate's degree, Mandani lost. How about some college? So you don't have an associate's degree.
Mandani, my gut is it would go even higher. But you're saying I'm wrong.
You're wrong. Some college, Mandani 40%, Cuomo 48%. How about high school graduate?
See, I would have thought high school graduate would be 70+% for Mandani.
Nope.
You're telling me that's wrong. This is breaking the normal model.
Okay. Of high school graduates, Mandani got 39%, Cuomo got 47%, and finally, no high school degree, so didn't even graduate high school.
I mean, clearly based on the trend now, the majority vote against Mandani that didn't have a high school degree.
So no high school degree, 40% voted for Mandani, 49% for Cuomo. So Cuomo beat Mandani by 9 points. So who elected Comrade Mandani? It is the smarty pants, college-educated, advanced degrees It is the rich who elected Mandani. By the way, working class, look, if you've got a GED, if you've got a high school degree, they're like, we don't want a socialist. These people are nuts. And it is the rich New Yorkers who look, I'm not an armchair psychologist, but
so
this is who elected.
This is the Soroses.
It is the Soroses. By the way, the same Comrade Mandani who said we should have no billionaires also happily tweeted out a picture. Actually, Alex Soros tweeted out a picture. So proud to be a New Yorker. The American dream continues. Congrats, Mayor, with a picture of the two of them together. This is the same guy who said no billionaires, well, except for the billionaires that funded the communist takeover of New York City.
Now, if you want to hear the rest of this conversation, you can go back and listen to the full podcast from earlier this week. Now on to story number 2. I know you got to run, Senator, soon, but I want to ask you one other question.
Sure, ask me anything you want.
And it goes back to the book. When you write this book and you sit down to do it, who did you envision reading it? Is there some bigger purpose where you're like, I want to write this for the future generation? Was part of it just I want to just tell my story and how I got to where I am today? What was it?
Here's what I did. I sat down with a handheld dictaphone at my kitchen table, and I started dictating. And I dictated, I don't know how many hours, hundreds of hours. And then I had it transcribed, and then I put it together, and then I had an editor come in who looked at it and rearranged it. And then I just started editing. And I was speaking to the same person that Ted and I both speak to when we do interviews, the average American. And I tried to speak plainly. I don't try to muddy the water to make it look deep. The American people don't have time for that. And I wanted them to understand that if you get mad, I can't help it. I have the right to remain silent, but God did not give me the ability. and some people are going to like it and some don't. But that's what the American people expect from their politicians today. And it's one of the reasons that Senator Schumer, who Ted and I both know, he's right now, he's got 30% approval rating. He's got a 60% disapproval rating. The other 10% won't pause their video game to answer the pollster's call. And Chuck is polling, he's polling right up there with clubbing baby seals. That's, I mean.
But to be fair, he's still above chlamydia.
He's still above. He's still above. It's
barely,
marginal. It's close. But because Chuck's been here so long, Ted, you know this, he's been here so long, he sounds like Washington.
Yeah. So I will say it's interesting. You and I have a very similar process, it sounds like, for writing a book, because that's very much the books I've written. And some of it may be being a lawyer and having written briefs, that process of recording and telling stories. In my books, I just try to tell stories because that's how people communicate.
I've read a couple of your books. There's a difference between you and me, though. I've written one book. Ted's written about a squillion. Okay, but it's hard. I mean, I'm not. It is a painful process.
You know, all right, you're a kid. When does the idea of being a lawyer, what was it that made you say, hey, I can do that, I want to do that?
My dad was from a Depression family in Oklahoma. He got a degree, worked his way through college in petroleum engineering, came to Louisiana to work in the oil fields, married my mom. I have 3 brothers. From day one, they drilled into us, education, education, education. And it wasn't where you're going to go to college, or when you're going to go to college, it was where.
Right.
And that was drilled in from day one. And I enjoyed college, but I started thinking about law school then. But I stalled and restalled Ted as long as I could. I mean, I spent 4 years in college, and then I went 3 years in law school, and then I clerked for a federal judge, and I tried to get a Supreme Court clerkship. I didn't. You did.
Yep.
And then I said, well, I'm not ready for the real world. I'm going back to school. I went back and got another law degree at Oxford.
Yep.
And then finally I was out of money, and I wanted to eat and live indoors. So I didn't want to live in a refrigerator box behind an Outback, so I had to go to work for a living.
And Ben, I know something that I know you don't know. I know the name of his old law partner.
Who is that?
Who's that?
So he would practice. His name obviously is John Kennedy, and his partner was Jose Canseco. And he'd walk in, and it'd be John Kennedy and Jose Canseco here to see
that
you.
Story. That's a true
and they
story.
would double take.
One of my best friends, I was for Louisiana, a big law firm, 630 lawyers, and one of my good friends was Jose Canseco. And we'd go to meetings.
That's amazing.
I'd say, I'm John Kennedy, this is Jose Canseco, we're here to see so-and-so. And they would say, you're here to see security, sir. True story.
All right, so when did you get the idea in your head you wanted to run for office? Was this something like as a kid you always wanted to do?
I always thought about it. But I was practicing law, earning a good living. Louisiana politics was rough. I mean, it was rough. It was under Governor Edwin Edwards. I wasn't part of his clique.
Who has my favorite political bumper sticker ever.
Yep.
And you know exactly where I'm going. Do you know this, Ben? I don't know if you know this.
I do not.
So Edwin Edwards is running for governor against David Duke. Now, David Duke was the former grand wizard of the KKK.
Grand wizard, right?
But Edwin Edwards was as corrupt. He was as crooked as a dog's hind leg. See, I'm trying to do this to keep up with John Kennedy.
Pretty good, Ted.
And everyone knew he was corrupt. And so Edwin Edwards' bumper sticker said, "Vote for the crook. It matters."
That's right.
And if you're running against a Klansman, that was a winning slogan. Yeah. And then you know what? He was indicted and convicted of embezzlement or fraud or something.
When the economy was doing well in Louisiana, I mean, this was having a colorful governor was all fun and games. He was a big. He was very promiscuous. He used to say, they make. How did he put it? When I give blood, they use it to make Viagra. I always thought that was a pretty good one. And
there's a bumper sticker for you.
That's a line they would have used about Strom Thurmond, too. You and I didn't serve with Strom Thurmond, but by all accounts, that would have described him accurately.
And he was running for governor, I think his third time, and he was way ahead in the polls. He was running against the incumbent. And the press asked him, they said, "Are you going to win this race?" And he said, "Well, let me put it this way. The only way I can lose this race in the last week is if I'm caught in bed with a live girl or a dead boy." And I thought that was pretty clever. But eventually his past caught up to him. And we elected a reform governor named Buddy Romer. I'd supported him. He asked me to leave my practice, come to Baton Rouge, and I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I was his legal counsel. And I stayed, and then I ran for office and got elected. And I ran for the Senate 3 times. Took me 3 times to get here. And I thought they left me for dead for a few times politically. I switched parties because the Democrat, I just couldn't be a Democrat anymore, and they all got mad at me, and they tried to hurt me. But the mistake they made, they let me live. They never should have let me live. So I won it on the 3rd time, and here we are. We're having fun.
All right, biggest surprises when you get to the Senate. Biggest surprise upside and biggest surprise downside.
Biggest surprise upside, you probably saw this. I came in wanting to gallop. You can't gallop in the Senate. You have to inch along. And at first that frustrated me. It still does. But it's not altogether bad because after a while you realize the senator's job is not just to advance good ideas. It's to kill bad ideas. And sometimes killing the bad ideas is more important than advancing the good ideas. That has been my biggest transformation in the Senate. But it's frustrating. Senator McConnell is your friend and mine, but Mitch was the majority leader, and I wasn't used to taking orders from another politician. And Mitch and I butted heads a few times. He butted heads with you.
Oh, yeah.
Mitch liked to run it from the top down. And I remember you and I talked when we passed President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We passed it through reconciliation. And Ted was an advocate of doing a second bill.
Yep.
And it just took a majority vote, no Democrats. Yep. And I backed him. And Mitch wouldn't do it. And we left so much good policy on the table.
It remains the most politically indefensible decision I've ever seen.
And I hope we don't do it under Trump's second term.
And actually, John brought that up at lunch today.
Yeah.
Made that argument, and it's clearly, look, it is our best avenue to win victories, and we should be focused on winning victories. Now, that being said, we got a lot done in that one big beautiful.
Sure, but we get a second bite at the apple.
Exactly, and a third if we want it.
And why not take it?
Yep.
Why not take it? And we don't have to get Democratic votes.
Yep.
Because I'm I want to think the best of people, but I just think it's going to be hard to negotiate anything with the Democrats from here on out.
They just hate Trump. They're so extreme right now.
They're just blinded by their passion.
Yep.
Senator, I'm afraid of hitmen from Louisiana. Your staff's telling me we were supposed to wrap with you a few minutes ago, so I want to hold up the book again. Senator,
oh man,
thanks.
That.
All right. So let me tell everyone again.
Know what to buy.
The book is How to Test Negative for Stupid and Why Washington Never Will. It is by John Kennedy, not John F. Kennedy, but John Kennedy, the great United States Senator. The book is funny. It is interesting. It gives you stories behind the scenes of what's going on in the U.S. Senate. John Kennedy rats out all his colleagues. He makes them embarrassed. He makes them curl up. Chuck Schumer curled up in a ball in the closet and cried like a little girl when John Kennedy wrote this book. So you need to go to Amazon and buy it. And I will say, as I said before, John Kennedy is easily one of my favorite colleagues. He is
right
funny
funny
as hell, and he is smart as hell. A lot of people don't realize this man is dangerous and has, he's an Oxford-educated lawyer, and with a Southern accent, particularly Yankees underestimate and be like, all right, he's got a Southern accent, he can't be all that bright.
You can't accuse me of being not being self-aware. I'm fully aware that my voice scares small children and sets off car alarms, but it's my voice. But thank you for having me, Ted. Thank you, Ben.
And I'm going to close. I'm going to close with my favorite Kennedyism, which was in a Judiciary Committee hearing. John Kennedy leaned forward into the microphone, and he said, "Christmas tree ornaments and Jeffrey Epstein, two things didn't hang themselves."
I love it.
And I was sitting there going, wait, this is at an open hearing of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Did he really say that?
I did. It was true. I'd read that joke somewhere. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
As before, if you want to hear the rest of this conversation on this topic, you can go back and download the podcast from earlier this week to hear the entire thing. I want to get back to the big story, number 3 of the week you may have missed.
So, Ben, have you been to Israel before, or is this the first trip?
This is my pilgrimage, very first time ever.
Well, it is amazing. I've been a number of times to Israel, and it is a breathtaking place. It is a place all of history converges on. It is the birthplace of Christianity. It is the birthplace of Judaism. In Israel, in Jerusalem, you walk down roads, the city of David, which is this underground archaeological excavation under Jerusalem. You walk down the road from the Pool of Shiloh to the old temple where Jesus most certainly walked. And you walk along it, and there are platforms that a street preacher, an itinerant preacher would stand and preach on. And I've stood on those platforms, and it takes your breath away that Jesus Christ almost certainly stood on this particular piece of stone, addressing the crowd of the Israelites who were there in Jerusalem. It is the Sea of Galilee. You imagine Jesus walking up to Peter, walking up to fishermen and saying, "Follow me and let me make you fishers of men," and not just fishermen. And it's a beautiful place. It is a profound place. So tell me, when did you arrive, and what have you done on the ground in Israel?
So it arrived on Monday after a delayed flight, missed a flight because of actually the shutdown is what we were told and then we had a timeout with the air traffic controllers and also the crew on the plane. So we sat on the tarmac for about 5 hours in Houston, and then they said, "You got to get off the plane. We've lost our crew because of the rules."
Wow.
And this is a TSA, and it was at the very beginning of kind of the breakdown.
And are you part of a broader group, or like what's the reason for going to Israel?
Yeah, so I was asked to come over from the Israeli government, and also came with the CEO of IFCJ, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. There is a Christian leadership conference happening here as well at the same time. It is one that's been postponed because of the war, and so I was asked to speak at that. This is a conference where Bibi is speaking, where you have the mayor of Jerusalem is speaking. You have the U.S. ambassador Mike Huckabee as well, and it is bringing Christians together back to the Holy Land. But then what also has happened is they've set up these incredible moments and tours where I've been able to meet with some of the victims of the war and go and see where the war is taking place. So yesterday we actually went to the border with Syria and with Lebanon, and went literally to where we could see Hezbollah looking at us.
And you met with the parents of the kids who were killed on the soccer field. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So last night, I have, and I will try not to get emotional, but it's hard not to. I was asked to come and to meet with the families, some of the families there was 12 children that were killed while playing soccer on a soccer field. It made international news. Yeah. We covered it on this show. And they asked me if I would meet with the families and hear the family stories. And I was there, and the parents were talking of this was one of the little girls you can see who died, and her mother was the first one to speak. And
what were the age of the kids?
They want to tell the story. They were all different ages. They were very young to a 17-year-old, if I remember correctly. Some of it was through translation, but you can kind of see the different ages here. Some of them are obviously, most were younger, but you can see there someone's a little bit older. And junior high, you can see that's one of the oldest kids there. And that was, it's incredible. But we sat there and we were hearing their stories, these kids. And at the very end, they said they'd like to present me with something. I didn't know they were going to do this. And I put the picture up on social media, but the mother of this young girl said that they wanted to give me something. And I didn't see the ball before they brought it out, but these pictures on this ball, so people understand, they're stickers. They're handmade. And they said they wanted to say thank you for standing up for their kids and for telling their story to the world, because they want people to understand what it's like to live in Israel and what was taken from them.
And by the way, these were children that were doing nothing. They were playing on a soccer field. They were being kids, and suddenly Hezbollah rocket came over and killed them all.
Yeah, and it was the way that they described it was they didn't care who they killed. Yep. There was a lot of media spin that, well, this soccer field maybe wasn't directly target. Hezbollah doesn't care who they kill. They just want to kill Jews.
Northern Israel, southern Israel, where's the kibbutz you went to?
Northern, on the opposite side of where the attack happened. The initial attack happened on October the 7th.
Okay, so right by the Golan Heights.
Border with Lebanon and Hezbollah.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the map, this would be in Syria, Hezbollah at the northern point. And they started us there because they said they wanted us to understand that the goal
and by the way, for folks
was
at home
actually
to
to
understand,
attack from both sides.
For folks at home to understand, so Israel is a very small nation. It's about the size of the state of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Where October 7th happened was in the southern part of Israel. It's right by the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is along the Mediterranean in the southern part. And Hamas, which is the major terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip, entered into southern Israel and murdered over 1,200 Israelis, raped women and little girls, took over 200 Israelis hostage. It was also one of the worst American terrorist attacks ever, as we saw dozens of Americans murdered, dozens of Americans taken hostage. Now, northern Israel, which is up by Lebanon and Syria, what you have up there is Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a different terrorist organization. Both Hezbollah and Hamas, their patron is Iran, and Iran funds over 90% of Hamas's budget. Iran funds over 90% of Hezbollah's budget. When October 7th first erupted, Israel quite rightly declared, we are going to utterly destroy Hamas. There was an interesting period that extended for weeks and then even a couple of months where it wasn't clear if Hamas would be, or rather Hezbollah would be drawn into this. Hamas was the aggressor on October 7th. And Hezbollah had the opportunity just to shut up and not engage. And then Hezbollah pretty quickly decided, nope, we want to raise our hand, we want to engage, and began just firing rockets, a massive barrage of rockets into northern Israel. thousands, and the kids
about
on the soccer
60%.
field.
I was told yesterday by the U.S. government that about 60% of all the rockets on hand that Hezbollah had in their arsenal were shot during this war.
Repeat that. That's a powerful statement.
60%. And as we had our briefing from the Israeli government, we actually went to this neighborhood, this kibbutz, and in this neighborhood, their sin for being targeted by Hezbollah was that they farm pink lady apples that we eat in the United States of America.
And by the way, much of northern Israel was evacuated because the rocket attacks were so intense that the Israelis couldn't live there anymore because you couldn't go into your own home without risk of rock blowing it up. And so the amazing thing is Hezbollah literally volunteered and said, hey, we want to be part of this. And then the Israelis carried out the pager attack, which remains one of the most extraordinary military and intelligence operations I think the world has ever seen. Where, I mean, I've joked, but this is not a joke. If you wrote the pager attack as a script to a movie, nobody in Hollywood would buy it. If you wrote it as a Jason Bourne movie, they'd say, this is ridiculous. You're telling me Israel creates a shell company in Hong Kong, builds pagers. Years in advance, makes them heavy-duty, kind of serious, hardcore pagers, and embeds where the battery would be a tiny little explosive, then gets this shell company in Hong Kong to sell the pagers to Hezbollah. Like, how the hell do you do that? I don't know how you sell pagers to Hezbollah, but the Mossad does, Israel does, sells them to Hezbollah, and then this remains the single most targeted military and intelligence attack, I think, in history, because it was Hezbollah leadership that decided, okay, who is it that gets these pagers? I'm going to give it to every crazy-ass terrorist we have in Lebanon. The people that I want to be able to page and say, hey, would you go blow up a bus? Would you go blow up a mall? Would you go murder children? Take this pager. And then Israel, in a simultaneous moment, detonated all the pagers and took out every person that was injured, every person that was killed, with very minor exceptions of someone who was really close to a terrorist. They were personally selected by the leaders of Hezbollah. Hezbollah decided which terrorist died. And by the way, within a day or two, there was a second operation where Hezbollah was using walkie-talkies. Those blew up. And I got to say,
infiltrated. They blew those up as well.
Yeah. By the end of it, I think every Hezbollah terrorist, every Hamas terrorist, every Iran IRGC terrorist, like every time a phone rang, they jumped. It was extraordinary, and it was a response to what Hezbollah literally volunteered and said, we want to be decimated as bad as Hamas. And Israel said, well, happy to oblige.
Yeah, and you go back to this neighborhood, and as we went into this neighborhood, which the people have, a lot of them have still not returned. Some of the farmers are coming there to farm, but Hezbollah knew the houses that they were blowing up in this neighborhood were farmers. They knew that they were families, and what they did to justify their attacks early on was when the people had fled, the Israeli military would take back in to the husband of the home to go get some of their belongings before they would flee again. And they justified the military walking in the house as the reason to blow the house up. And so I met with a farmer who had 3 children the exact same age as my kids.
Wow.
And he was showing us his neighborhood. And he was talking about how I had to come back to tend the fields because this is my home. And I was literally under rocket barrage and would come to work knowing that Hezbollah was targeting the houses. And so finally, after a few days, the homeowner said to the military, don't go back into my house, because as soon as you go in there, they blow up my home and everything is destroyed. We went into a home. The books of the children were still there. The stove was still there the way it was set that morning. One of the homeowners offered me a piece of a broken pot of their home and a burner of the stove and said, take it back, and a piece of their tile in their children's bathroom. I'll put it on my desk for the rest of my life. But to hear them talk about the brutality of Hezbollah, knowing that you're blowing up a farmer's home who has never bothered you in your entire life for sport. It was just for sport at that point. It wasn't even
hatred.
killing a person.
For pure
they knew that they were
bilious
gone.
hatred.
Yeah, just pure sport and hatred. Like, we're going to blow up your neighborhood because you are Jewish. We know you're not there. We know you have fled, but we want you to come back to destruction and ruins. And to
So
see
you've
that,
been in northern
and
Israel. Have you been in Tel Aviv? Have you been in Jerusalem? Where else have you been?
Been in Tel Aviv as well, which is an incredible city. I didn't realize how much it's like New York City or a major.
Yeah, it's a
big
very
city.
modern
It's a
city.
nightlife city. But one other thing I want to mention about this trip so far is I met with the mother of one of the hostages that was taken that became, unfortunately, she became famous. If you remember the videos that came out, there is a girl that's been separated from her boyfriend. She is in between two terrorists on a motorcycle. And she's reaching out and screaming for her boyfriend, who is being held with his arms behind his back by two terrorists, and they're separating them. And that video just went viral early on in the moments after. He was held underground for 2 years without seeing sunlight and was starved. He was returned. They just reunited. You may have seen that video of them in the hospital finally getting to see each other again and hugging and falling backwards as they hug on the hospital bed. And the mother was telling the story of her son and the trauma, the way that they were mentally tortured and lied to, that there was destruction of all of Israel, been destroyed, that they were told that their loved ones had been killed, their family members had been murdered, that no one had survived, that they were going to die, that they were going to dig their own graves, some of them did, to see the torment. And I think that's one of the things I will forever remember from this trip, and I'm grateful for it, is when we talk about what this is like, the psychological warfare, Senator, and the evil of Hamas and Hezbollah has no ends. Whether it's blowing up farmers' homes for sport, whether it is killing children, is that the soccer ball, and seeing these kids who were their only crime was being Jewish and playing sports. That's it.
Look,
this little girl whose mother I met yesterday, and I put it up on social media.
Who kill civilians are the embodiment of evil, and sadly, we live in a world where evil is plentiful.
It's incredible. So today I'm going to be leaving with the government and going down to the site of the attack at the festival, and I'm going to be meeting with some of the hostages there. I'm going to hopefully tell those stories as well in one of our next episodes, because it's just telling their stories and letting people understand what happened that day. And going to go to the kibbutz that were attacked there and tour the homes of the children that were murdered in their cribs. I'm going to meet with the families of the elderly that were killed, including Holocaust survivors. I met with some Holocaust survivors that were are homeless in essence and had to move to Jerusalem to survive the war. I met with them as well. Incredible stories. So we'll have more of that, I promise you, coming up in other episodes. But I want to say to everyone that is listening, if you are a person of faith, the pilgrimage to come here and to see, I think the hope of our faith in Christianity, to walk where Jesus walked, to walk where he carried the cross. I did that the first day I was here.
Yeah.
And to be able to just see the Sea of Galilee and witness where so much of our 80% of the biblical history in the Bible with Jesus, I got to witness from standing in one place.
And it's amazing to see.
And it spread to the
see
world.
Where they believe Jesus was crucified, where they believe he was buried, and where he rose again in heaven.
I got to go to the tomb, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, standing in the tomb, look, as a believer, it takes your breath away.
As I described it to family in a text, I said the level of feeling, I would say, the Holy Spirit in these places is something I've never felt before. The second closest I've ever felt to that type of spiritual gathering of Christians was honestly at Charlie Kirk's memorial, and it was incredible. Two of the biggest spiritual moments in my life have happened in the last 60 days, both in a weird way around tragedy, which also is why I think it's incredible when you're a Christian that you know that God is still a God of hope.
Amen.
As always, thank you for listening to Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you. Don't forget to download my podcast, and you can listen to my podcast every other day you're not listening to Verdict, or each day when you listen to Verdict afterwards. I'd love to have you as a listener to, again, the Ben Ferguson podcast, and we will see you back here on Monday morning.